Well, good evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are doing this August top picks tasting for the online wine tasting club. We have suffered through 40 degrees heat, 38 degrees heat. We're still looking out the window, praying for a little bit of rain. I knew what I was saying.
That's what we call a Freudian slip
It
there,
is
isn't
indeed.
it?
It is indeed. So this is our August tasting. This is our adventurous level top picks, and we've done a lot of running around, and we've been doing this for 2 years now. 2 years now, and lots of great places, lots of great wine, lots of great people. But rather than doing a mega deep dive into the world of oak aging or Tempranillo, we thought that this month we would, talk, because we like to talk about ourselves, a little bit about ourselves.
Yeah.
For those who are new to us, why we do this, what gets us excited about wine. And then we've got 6 wines that we have picked that we just think are cool and exciting and special, and some of our just
our club's all about
things.
trying to help you find your next favourite glass of wine. And so when we're covering all of these themes, we quite often end up trying to cover that region, but it's not necessarily the wines that we really will pick up and go to drink. And here are some of the ones which we've come across in our way that we just keep going back to, and if we go, what should we have tonight? These are the ones that we go for.
All six of these. But
also, hopefully, they help tell you a bit about our tastes as well as wine lovers, and in our own rights. So
we'll see you've dulled down your shirt a little bit today when talking about people's tastes.
That's a very fair point. 6 really cool wines from some of our favourite producers, and we're really looking forward to presenting them, and we hope that you'll share the same opinion of these really cool wines. So we're starting off with a very nicely chilled bottle, which actually I'm quite looking forward to because it is still roasting hot in here, of Soave. Soave is made from the beautifully named grape Garganega, and that's a mouthful. Although this has a little bit of Trebbiano in it.
So this I absolutely love.
These are like the kings of Soave.
So this is Pieropan, and Soave itself, probably late 80s, early 90s, got a little bit of a bad rap for just being this mass-produced, cold, wet, white, did what it did. And to be fair,
a victim of its own success, basically.
To be fair, that was absolutely fair, because there is, at the bottom of the hillside where this particular winery is, you can see over, and there's this big metallic factory, and that big metallic factory makes 92% of all the Soave in the world.
Crazy.
Which is a lot of it, and that's what people see and what people expect it to be. And it was this kind of ubiquitous cold, wet, white juice, and it kind of replaced, well, not even replaced, but it was Pinot Grigio-esque. It was Pinot light, cheap, easygoing, but a lot of them, nothing special, nothing wrong with them, very drinkable, but not very much character.
So where are we in Italy? We're somewhere up the north, aren't we?
We are ask me for geography here.
I can even put a map on.
So we are up near Verona. So we're about probably a 45-minute drive from Verona out to the countryside. You're on the coast of Lake Garda. So you've got Lake Garda, which has this beautiful moderating influence in the area, and then you get into Soave, you come through these little villages, and then you get into the Classico region, which is within the walled gardens. You've got a medieval castle up there. And what I found very strange when I went there was all the houses and the people seem to be outside the wall, and then you come through the wall, and that's where all the vineyards are. So if ever under attack, the grapes are safe, and that
tells you about prioritisation, doesn't it?
Exactly.
So you should definitely be looking for the Soave Classico. That's the old traditional heart of this, and where the grapes have just got a lot more character.
Absolutely, and you're further up, higher hillsides. The grapes have to work harder, hand harvested.
That's beautiful.
And just an absolutely beautiful wine. It's bright, it's fresh, it's got lovely texture. And once again, wine, the juice has to be good, but the stories are what make it exciting. And, people are bored of me saying I went to Italy, but I went to Italy and was at Venezia. And this was one of the wineries we got actually from, not in the conference, we got out and got over there. And they've got this spanking brand new winery that's built into the hillside. It's absolutely beautiful. It used to be basically a shed with a few barrels, and now they've got this state-of-the-art winery that's cut into the hillside. You walk in and it's just absolutely amazing. It's big, it's open, it's airy, and it's now run by the two sons, Dario and Andrea, and they kind of took us round on a tour, and
they've invested big into this.
We're millions and millions and millions and millions of pounds to build this winery. But everything is there for a reason, and everything is there. You know, there's some things that look very showy, and that you can clap your hands and the lights come on and it's epic. But hey, if you're spending that much money, why would you want to have to press a switch?
Exactly.
But this is done. It's all done in concrete tanks, but the concrete tanks have got a layer of glass inside. So it's a glass layered concrete tank. So it's not about the concrete being neutral, it's about the concrete is there for the temperature control of these wines. And they have stainless steel vats, but they use that purely for bottling. Really interesting, because we're talking about not a big fan of stainless steel, because stainless steel can, even though it's relatively neutral, basically there can be a reaction between wine and stainless steel that will basically strip off some of the aromatics, the aromas and stuff like that. So they literally put it into stainless steel to pump it into the bottles, because they won't pump it straight from the concrete tanks because they can't move them. So they use very little stainless steel. It's all in these concrete tanks that like these big egg shapes and little clap, and they light up. It's absolutely beautiful. But
when you go around a winery, especially an older winery, one that's been in a few different generations, you'll quite often say, why have you got this thing here? And the winemaker will sort of go, yeah, that's just always been there, and we kind of have to use it. But whereas when you go into a one where they've had the opportunity to start from scratch and just buy the exact tools that they want for that grape, for that job, it's really cool to see. And you know, you can massively tell the difference. Some of the wineries we've been to, it's just been we're trying to get away from that, but this is quite clearly they're trying to come up with a tool that's just for the job of doing
absolutely.
that.
And they do make a little bit of red as well, not very much at all. It's much more white, but they've got lots of different styles. So this is their bread and butter, their Classico Soave, but they do ones that they barrel age. They've got a wine that's a blend of 5 previous vintages put together. Cool. Some really, really cool stuff. But this, you know, we went out and had dinner with these guys, and this just shows where local food, local wine all goes together. We had a fantastic dish of it. Was just
he talks about going to Italy, and it's not just like we're going on holiday to Italy and you go off and do it. When you go on a wine trip, you get properly shown the behind the scenes thing and introduced to the exact way that you hear the real story, and you get treated like kings, frankly, on these things, don't you? So
absolutely. And it was but some of the food, it was just so simple but so epic. You know, great risottos with just a little bit of cheese on. But there's one dish that it was fresh peas, bit of like a burrata on top, and then just a little bit of balsamic vinegar, and that was it. That was it, with some Soave, and it was absolutely decadent and
fantastic.
Simple food. And when I say simple wine, I mean that with the utmost level of respect. This isn't something that's, you know, you got to lay it down for 10 years and write 28 pages of tasting notes. It's but sometimes you go, you know, into, you know, white wines, and they go, it's a simple, and it's boring. This is a very interesting wine, but it's an easy to drink interesting wine. You're not going to upset anyone with this, are you?
There's a saying, isn't it? You know, I think simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, because it's very easy to make something simple but wrong.
That's what they say about me.
That is.
No, it's not.
Makes sense. And yeah, to make something that is so precise like that and has got complexity in it, it takes an awful lot of understanding and work. And there's any number of ways that you can make it wrong. You can make things complicated very easily. You could put on another oak barrel. You could use a different yeast strain. You could do this. You can keep making a wine more complex. But to make it simple and perfect is incredibly hard.
Oh, it's very easy if you've got poor quality fruit to chuck it in an oak barrel and go, that's all right,
Yep.
done. Or, let it hang a little bit longer so you get some richness and ripeness, and that hides kind of some of the flavours. But when you're trying to make this very linear, crisp, fresh style of wine, you've got to be making smart winemaking moves, but they've been doing it for generations. They were the first single vineyard Soave, I think it was 1971, first single vineyard Soave, and it's beautiful wine, and one of the most beautiful places. I mean, that area, lots of hills though. It's it's get out and walk up. You're like, and there's another level and another level. And I think we might be able to stick a picture of there, and you can just kind of see the view down into the town and go, ooh, that's a long way up. But yeah, absolutely beautiful place, lovely people, great food, and I get excited about good wine in the bottle, but I also get excited about the people and the stories and the hospitality and what goes with it. And I think that's what makes wine enjoyable. It's the stories of where you've been, who you've met, who you drank this wine with, what you tasted, all adds to that great bottle of wine.
And then he comes back and tells me about it, and I'm sat there being very jealous. But I get that same kind of passion. I can visualise this place now, and I've had a lot of. I have to admit, I've had a lot of really bad Soaves back in the sort of early 2000s and things, and it was just a cheap thing that you had with your Italian food, and this is a mile.
But I think when you say that, I think that's an important thing, that you can't tar wine with the same brush. Going, oh, I don't like Soave, because there's lots of different Soaves out there, and we can find one that you will enjoy. It might not be your favourite thing, but you'll go, oh yeah, that's that. And the same with anything. Oh, I don't like Riesling. Well, that's a lie, but let's not use that example. That's poor. But Chardonnay, Chablis versus these big Australian things, both really, really good wines in their own right. But it depends what you personally like.
So what would you be? This, it goes with so many things.
So this, it's that light thing. So this is for me classically a seafood dish, kind of like a squid ink pasta or something like that. A bit of scallops in there.
Nice.
The burrata that I had with it was epic. Something like a risotto where you get that richness, you get that
creaminess
and then you get that acidity to go with.
Yeah.
And I think you need to have something that's got a little bit of meatiness about it or a little bit of fattiness about it, because you have got that little bit of richness and you have that acidity. If you had something that was very, very light, the wine, even at this level, might overpower a bit because you've got that weightiness on the palate. But yeah, scallops, prawns, anything with a little bit of cheese in there, I think would do really, really well with this. So,
Derringstone.
This is Alex's white pick.
This is. And what's most funny about this is that it is not made from white grapes. It is made from red grapes, and that makes it a quite common technique in the world of sparkling wines. Of course, champagne is made from Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, Chardonnay, some others, but not so commonly.
This isn't as white as I was expecting.
This is a golden amber shade. It's certainly it's a darker shade than they have had in the past. Now, they're trying to avoid any colour coming in from the grapes, but when you press them, if they've got good ripe skins, you can't help accidentally make a little sort of slightly like a rosé. But other vintages of this have been completely clear, and that's a heck of an achievement. But it's a fun one to try to put into a blind tasting. So, as a few of you who've been with us for a while know, when I got into wine on a sort of more professional level, I went down to Plumpton College in East Sussex to train up and to learn all about it. And one of the things that all of the people on my course would do, we'd get ourselves together into a room where we'd do a blind tasting competition where everyone contributes a bottle. And this Derringstone was mine, because not only is it one of my absolute favourites, because it's so unexpected and delicious, and it's just a really well-made wine, but people are sat there going, okay, this is a white wine, but I'm getting hints of, is that red fruit? And yes, it is. It is hints of red fruit, the kind of flavours you only normally get from red wine. So this is a white wine, or it's hard to call it white, this particular vintage of it, but it is a really interesting, complex and delicious wine. And even before I started working with Jamie, I was ordering loads of this stuff from Simpsons, and Simpsons was then, when we did our very first ever tasting, we went down to their vineyard and they showed us around, and we tasted through everything they did. I just think it is so delicious.
I think in a world, and I'm going to get slapped by anyone at IEWA when I say this, English wine, there's a lot of samey. And yes, there are a few people out there doing some cool,
crazy,
weird and wonderful stuff, but in such small production that you're never going to see it.
Yeah.
This, I'm not saying this is massive production by any stretch of the imagination, but you can get your hands on a couple of bottles. And it's moving away from it being Bacchus or Chardonnay or sparkling or a Pinot Noir rosé.
Yeah.
That's really what you're getting. To do this and make it well, and it's not made to a recipe. Each vintage is different, and they take what the land gives them and what the grapes give it and go, okay, if we've had a warm summer, we're going to have a slightly maybe thicker skin, so we might get a little bit more pinky on it. If we have a cooler year, you know, we pick and we have less and we have higher acidity or whatever, and we get a more kind of, you know, clearer colour in it. And I think that's sometimes what's great and also awful about wine. It's difficult for someone getting into wine to say, I love this wine, I'm going to follow it, I'm going to buy 10 cases every year, because it's so different vintage on vintage.
Precisely, yeah.
So it's not your, you know, your Budweiser of wine that's made to a recipe, but it shows that wine is a living, breathing, changing thing, not only from what comes out of the vineyard, the new techniques that happen, what people are trying to look for, what the trends are, and there's so many different things that you're able to do, and Simpsons do this. They make multiple Chardonnays, and you taste them side by side, you would think they're from a different planet, let alone from, you know, just across the road from each other.
They've got one which is incredibly precise and Chablis like, that really clear, crystal clear one, and they've got other ones which are done in beautiful, rich French oak, and have got picked from a slightly riper corner of the ripest vineyard, and it's just worlds apart. But what I also find particularly nice about this is it's a grape that I don't think gets enough love. Pinot Meunier is just gets used in making champagne-style wines. And of course, that's what they set out to do. And it was only by accident they found that they happen to be able to make really, really good quality still wines as well.
I'm allowed to go off piece and talk about another winery.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'd say, we know red wines are not always that in the UK. You know, we had Lime Bay last month, which was the Pinot was epic, really, and it's probably the best I've tasted in the last 3 or 4 years. However, the best red wine I've ever had from the UK was made with Pinot Meunier. And that was from not a million miles away from Simpsons, and that was from Balfour, and they made their Red Miller, which was epic.
Spectacular wine.
Unfortunately, 40 quid a bottle. And that's sometimes where it is difficult. You go, here's 40 quid a bottle for a bottle of red English wine made with Pinot Meunier.
Quite.
But yeah, epic to try, epic to experience. But you know, it's wineries being smart, and I think what we've got in the UK that we've got to look at, our vintages vary so much. There's so vast ups and downs and and downs that you've got to take what you get each year and go, that's what it is.
And they don't make those kind of wines unless they've got the grapes. They just don't do it. So there was that one vintage where they made the Red Miller, and they haven't done it since. They do other cool projects. If the world gives them some fantastic, slightly less ripe grapes, they will produce a really cool sparkling wine or a rosé. But if it gives them super, super ripe, rich red grapes, then they go for it and they make a really cool red wine.
And that's the thing. Follow your local winery, find out what they're doing, be excited by them, and try new stuff. Just don't get stuck in a rut. Don't get stuck with what you had last year is what you're going to get this year, because I think, you know, you look at English wine over the last 20 years, has it improved vastly? Yes. Is it getting better and better and better? Yes. So we're going to see further improvements, and they're just getting better and better. And
they're learning as well about what their terroir is, and what the climate will do to these different grapes, because, you know, you bring in a clone of a grape, you bring in a clone of the roots that it grows on, you put them together, you put it into a ground, and you might have a vague idea of what you think that's going to do. And then it turns out completely different.
But while people are having a little sip of this, we should probably, rather than us yabber on about it, we could take people on a little tour to see what these vineyards are like, what the winery looks like, and it's got a slide.
It does. See you in a bit. Well, we've arrived here this morning into Boreham in Kent, in the Elm Valley, in the chalk of the Kentish Downs, and we have come to the Simpsons Wine Estate, where we're going to have a little bit of a look around and see what Charles and Ruth Simpson have been doing here.
Right, so this is the Roman Road vineyard. Welcome. As I mentioned before, it's south-facing slope, gradual slope, a relatively gentle slope, but a slope nonetheless. As we get closer, we'll see the chalk and flint soils. But as I mentioned before, it's surrounded on all four sides by mature trees that provides shelter and also creates a bit of a heat sink. But it still allows enough air movement to protect, from mildews and moulds as well. And I was talking about East Kent before. What is quite interesting as well that quite a few producers have arrived at the same conclusion, namely people like Chapel Down are planting this, their new vineyards are near here and near Maidstone, as is Nye Timber, who's based in Sussex. They're two new vineyards, one near Canterbury and the other one near Maidstone.
There's Domaine Evremon's around here as well.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. Domaine Everon, Tattinger, their joint venture with the UK importer, they did a lot of research and a lot of soil samples before arriving at the conclusion this is the part of the world they want to be. And the other reason that East Kent is ideal for a vineyard site is that it pokes basically into the sea. So the sea is only about 5 or 6 miles away in all directions. So that helps moderate the climate. But the one thing we do have is successful in as a lot of vineyards in England is frost. So for that we have the slope, which helps drain that cold air, which is heavier, down out of the vineyard. Our other vineyard, the Railway Hill, is even steeper and that drains very well usually. And we also have frost fans that we bring in, portable frost fans that sit in the middle of the vineyard and they operate automatically once the temperature drops below whatever temperature you set it. They activate, come on. It's a bit like the War of the Worlds. You have these large fans going oscillating like this, and that helps push the cold air out and draw in warmer air from above, and it helps with the ground frost. So this is this patch here is Pinot Meunier. You can see the chalk and the flint soils under here, and there's also, as I mentioned, these rabbit guards we put on early on. But you can also see some of the grafts there onto the rootstock. But the Pinot Meunier, relatively slow.
Great quality on these leaves, hasn't it?
It's relatively slow to get established in 16, and then got really frosted in 17. So we didn't have much Pinot Meunier in the first 2 harvests, and hence when you taste chalklands, the classic cuvee, there's no Pinot Meunier in that, but from 2018 we will have Pinot Meunier in there. And then from 2018 we started making a Blanc de Noir, still wine. Yeah.
Well, actually, I think I had it when it was the On the QT.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And, I think it's a fascinating wine. Jamie had a bottle of it the other night. Actually.
2 nights ago. In fact,
I hope you enjoyed it.
Doing a little, free
Research, professional development. No,
exactly,
I like it.
R&D, that is.
I like it.
The Pinot Meunier, it's known as the Miller. That's what Meunier means in French, isn't it? And you often get this slightly dusty quality on the leaves, which looks almost like it's been just sprayed with a bit of flour. But, So these are replacement cane prunes and or the classic Guillaume method. We were looking at, and we have looked at, and may go back to it, where you have a sacrificial cane for the frost. For the frost, yeah.
But we're looking at but you can see things like these secondary bunches that came in after, which won't probably get to the ripeness that we want. We don't know. So it'd be interesting.
So you have to be quite selective when you're doing the harvesting as well. I guess it's all hand harvested.
So it's hand harvested, hand pruned. But the key on a marginal in a marginal climate is the management of the canopy. So you don't want too much foliage, or the vines concentrating on foliage. But you need enough leaf area to get them ripe photosynthesized to get them ripe. So we concentrate a lot on that, and it's all, a lot of it's manual. So, a classic thing with these foliage wires, these are dropped down after harvest onto the ground at a critical time when the vines are spreading out and starting to interlock, and it's hard to get up and down the rows. The lads go through and lift up the foliage, which is always a good workout. If you ever want a good gym workout, you do quite a few miles of that. But it's very effective, lifts the foliage up, exposes the fruiting area, allows more air in, allows us to get the tractors on if we need to. We try and use minimal intervention as much as possible, but we're getting to know the sites as well, how they behave and what works and what doesn't work.
Welcome back, and having been to somewhere on the cooler end of the wine spectrum, we're now going somewhere a little bit warmer.
Cooler.
But still cool for Australia.
I'm saying it's cool.
You're just
cool
thinking,
wine, cool people.
It's there's two
not
different
temperature.
meanings to the word cool.
I know. See what I did there? See what I did there?
There's a photo on Twitter of a post that some guy was showing the inside of his fridge, and his two shoes were in there. His son had put his two shoes in the fridge, so that then every time he saw his father with these shoes on, he'd go, "Cool shoes, Dad."
Awesome. Right, edit. Welcome back. There's two parts in my life where I go, this is kind of what got me into wine. And there was one, I was in a restaurant in Washington, DC, and I got to taste two vintages of a really top-end Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon, like side by side, and was like, wow, isn't it amazing? Same grapes, same place, same winemaker, same barrel, and a year apart, the wines were both epic, but so vastly different.
Well, like that Derringstone.
Exactly, and that kind of really piqued my interest in wine. But then I went to Margaret River, and two things. I went to a winery who made a wine that I didn't particularly like. I tasted it in the States, and I'm like, it's not really my kind of thing. It was a Semillon Sauvignon blend. But I sat there in the vineyard with it. I'm like, it makes absolute sense why this wine tastes like it tastes. But then we got to go to Vasse Felix, and it was one of my first proper like winery trips. And you go up, and there's the kind of tasting room there. You see the vineyards, and we sat down with a winemaker, and this is where wine is all about sense of place. And there's a group of about a dozen of us, and we're tasting this wine, and not this vintage, obviously, because this vintage didn't exist when I went. Now it's back in 2010, 11, long time back. But you taste this wine, and it's got this richness about it that reminds you of, from my American, a little bit Napa Valley-esque.
Yeah.
But then you taste it, and it's got this beautiful elegance that reminds you of Burgundy. And we're there going, oh, this and that, and it's kind of almost a best of both worlds.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
The winemaker turned around and go, well, that's great, and it's amazing to be, in the same breath as those kind of things. But what I want is, in 15, 20, 30, 50 years' time, however long, someone to pick up the glass of wine and go, that's a Margaret River Chardonnay. Because it's a absolute standalone style. It's its own clone of Chardonnay. It's this what's called this Gingin clone that came from UC Davis. It was developed in California, and it was really sent over there to test whether or not Chardonnay would thrive, because it can be because it's so coastal. You can get a lot of kind of like moisture in the vineyards, and it could be susceptible to rot depending how. So it was sent there basically to see if Chardonnay would be disease resistant, and if it was any good, what clone should they take over? Would it be Dijon? Would it be
And just to give context to that, Chardonnay is, in the vineyard, one of the trickier grapes to try to keep healthy. You will find a lot of problems in especially, as you say, in slightly damper climates with things like mildew getting into the grapes and really causing them to rot. So that's why.
And it's that balance of being coastal that you do get coastal breezes, but that also brings a lot of water. So if you've not got enough coastal breeze and water sits, you can get this damp and this rot. It's you need almost like the perfect storm to make it work. But this ginger clone came in and planted, and it thrived, and people like the wine and like the flavour and go, oh, we'll use this one then.
Yeah.
Why change it? So it's this.
It's delicious.
It's ginger clone, and you know, Margaret River's what, 50-ish, 60 years old now, nearly. You know, 1967 was the kind of like first planting from Tom Cullity, who started the Vasse Felix, Vasse Felix winery. So you know, they've been around for a while. Western Australia has 84 plant species that you don't find anywhere else in the world. It's an absolute unique,
it's a proper little gem.
Microclimate that does its own things very, very, very well. And across the board, phenomenal wines. A lot of Chardonnay, a lot of kind of like Cabernet Sauvignon, a little bit of Syrah there, but some other cool stuff. You know, you get a little bit of Riesling, little pockets of this, that, the other. Some Tempranillo down there.
Oh, wow.
But there's what is these wineries' bread and butters are your Chardonnays, your Semillons, your Cabernet Sauvignons, and your Syrahs. But doing that allows them to do the more playful things.
But Chardonnay's a thing where it's very easy to overcomplicate it and to make it, to try to add that complexity by cheap methods, like whether it's wood chips or staves, things like that, which kind of work. They will flavour it and they'll make it taste like a more expensive wine because wood's expensive. And that was the real challenge with so many of these Aussie Chardonnays. They were in a race to the bottom of how can we try to keep making this cheaper and cheaper.
The most oak for the least money.
Yeah, more oak, and you can actually get powdered oak flavours and tannins that you can just stir into the wine now.
Bit of liquid smoke.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And there were a lot of these wines that were made to a recipe rather than being made as a
and I think that's what people all got a bit upset and fed up with over the time. And
America wasn't dissimilar.
No, true.
And I think it's oak, for people who aren't deep into the wine, hasn't really recovered from that. No. Oak is a bad word. Oh, I don't like oak. And so many wines that you do drink are the Riojas. People go, people don't associate red wine as much with oak because you don't get that. You do, but you don't get. It doesn't become one of the top flavors. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you take a white wine and you add oak, and suddenly you've got oak. Yeah. And that's what it was that people didn't like. Red wine, the oak kind of brings out the flavour, does what it does. And some of you go, oh, that's very oaky, very vanilla-y, but with a white wine, it's much more of that wood, toast, butter flavours that people don't like oak, and the change of colour that you get, this really deep, dark, golden colour. This less so.
Exactly.
But yeah, oak shouldn't be the wine's enemy, but oak should be there to complement. And like we talked earlier, if you've got horrible, cheap, bad fruit, people will chuck a load of oak on it to mask that. They really will. It's very. But the expensive oak thing, a lot of it. There was the Australia race to the bottom, but then there was also in California, the most expensive thing was oak. So it's like, oh, if I've got a $2,000 oak barrel, my wine's got to be good because I put it in a $2,000 oak barrel. Look at my $2,000. It didn't matter what juice was going in. So look at my $2,000 oak barrel, and that's where it came from. So it's getting the balance right.
In top end Chardonnay, French oak is the prize, and it turns out that transporting oak it's heavy, it's bulky, and it's not that expensive, but it's tough to transport such long distances. And so these barrels are ridiculously expensive when they arrive in Napa Valley or in Australia. So you have to be really dedicated, and it's very tempting to shout. I've used some really expensive barrels, and that's where all of your effort goes. But this is subtle. There's an oaky character to it, but
without a doubt.
But it's just so elegant and so skillfully done.
A balance. It's got nice richness. Can you sit and drink a glass of this? Absolutely. Is it great for food? Absolutely. Is it? This is a proper all-rounder Chardonnay.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's not steely and crisp and minerally like a Chablis. It's not blow your head off like a Colt Napa Valley, nothing but oak. It does very well, and you can see where each stage of the winemaking process, from the vineyard to the processing to the barreling to the aging, has been considered. This is 2018 in here, so you're 4 years old, and you can see you're starting to get a little bit of this caramel, a little bit of this nuttiness, but still lots of fresh apple and baked apple and Bosc pear, and there's a lot going on in there.
And it carries on. The length of the flavour is beautiful. It's not just one thing that lasts. You get this lovely mixture of the flavours still just persisting in your mouth for a really long time. That's very good.
And it is. This is my pick because I love the vineyard. It was one of my first kind of real forays into, wow, this is what vineyards are all about, and the memories, the tasting, the stories, the people, and it's always going to go back to that. It's always going to go back to that. And I'm going to go off tangent here because it was another thing that I learnt about while I was there, and it's not Vasse Felix was in Margaret River. We were sat in a little wine bar, and pretty good soms, and me, and the guy who was with us turned around and said, a lot of people running these very kind of like fine dining restaurants. What would you do? What do you do if someone comes into your restaurant and orders a white Zinfandel? And a couple of people go, well, we don't have it. A couple of people go, oh, well, I'd offer them something sweet like a Riesling or whatever. And the guy said, do you know what I do? I make them one. I take a little bit of Albarino, take a little bit of sugar, add a little bit of grenadine to it, shake it, pour, and go, make them a white Zinfandel cocktail.
How funny.
Because that's what they want, and that's what they like, and that's what's important. With all the things there are in wine, in food, in cocktails, in beers, it's not me to tell you what you should like. I can tell you what I like and what I enjoy. And if you tell me what you like and what you enjoy, I can hopefully
make people feel guilty about what they like.
I can hopefully guide you to it. Take White Zinfandel as the Sutter Home wouldn't make however many million cases a year of it. We talk about some of the the supermarket grocery wines. Well, if they were no good, people wouldn't be buying them. So sometimes we've got to be a little bit careful when we go up the echelons of getting a bit, righteous and going, well, that wine, that beer, that whatever, Or, is Carlsberg the best beer in the world? Probably.
I knew he was going to say it.
But
kind of advertising on.
But it's it comes to a recipe and people buy it and they like it. Is it as interesting and cool as the newfangled craft beer that's come out?
Nope.
Maybe not. But the same thing with wine. There's certain things that certain people love, certain styles that people love. That's why when we talk about Riesling, we all joke and we all go, "Ooh, Blue Nun." Well, guess what? We all know it. We've all heard of it. I don't go, "Oh, Riesling, Schloss Johannesburg," and everyone goes, "Oh yeah, I remember that one." They don't.
No.
So I think we can talk about favourites and the stuff that we're pouring in as favourites.
It's quite funny,
there's a lot of
there's no
premium
Riesling
stuff in
in
there.
here, and there's no Pinot Noir in here. And so I think we've consciously tried to sort of not just do the predictable thing.
Subconsciously. There's nothing conscious about no Riesling.
Fair enough. But yeah, it was too obvious thing. I've
3 Pinot Noirs and 3 Rieslings.
3 Pinot Noirs, 3 Rieslings. Oh wow, well, what a surprise. So we do enough Pinot Noirs, enough Rieslings. We haven't had a Pinot Meunier for I don't think we've ever had one, have we? Now we are moving on to wine number 4. We're on to the reds, and I have gone with something, like I said, not based on Pinot Noir from California, which is a bit of a surprise, I think, to most people, because while I love those wines to bits, I can't justify opening a bottle of Domaine de la Côte every sort of day. It's just a lot of money. But I have this special place in my heart for wines which have a lot of smoothness and, go back to a kind of wine which sommeliers actually often don't massively go for. They like things to be little oak. They like things to be really linear and precise. Things which have got a lot of oak on them and a lot of age give you this beautiful, beautiful hug because they have lots of development characters, the flavours which only can come about over time. Now, to get hold of these sort of things, this is a 2001, a 21-year-old wine. It is an absolute treat to be able to drink a 21-year-old wine. And the only way you can make a wine that lasts that long is with a lot of care and skill and some characteristics of the wine that are designed to age. And a big part of that is how the tannins come together. So in terms of value for money, I think Rioja and Spain is just off the charts. It is still the best secret in the world of old world wines, for sure. It's crazy. Everyone knows Rioja, and yet for some reason it just doesn't get this kind of love that I think it deserves. And so it's partly because it's a blended wine. We've all sort of moved towards single variety wines. The varietal wines, like, we just go and buy these things. But if you go into any wine shop in Spain, any part of the country, you will find the local wines and Cava and Rioja. It doesn't matter. As you move to a different town, you get that town's local wines and Cava and Rioja. But Rioja is clearly the standout region of Spain. And what we're going to be doing today is to do a proper WSET Level 3 analysis on this, so that we can start talking about which of these flavours come from the grapes, which come from the winemaking process like the barrels, and which come from the age and the development. Is that not corked?
No.
I can get TC on that.
Oh yeah, taste it, yeah.
It's f***ing corked.
Great.
Have we got any more?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a relief.
At the winery.
Oh, no! So,
Yeah.
the first thing when you're analysing a wine is obviously we go for our process does look
Clarity, clear, hazy,
or
faulty.
Indeed.
Faulty. So that is the end of our WSET Level 3. Thank you very much. We're done.
But this particular bottle is a tragedy, and we have just come across one of the things that we have to work very hard to eliminate from our production process, which is when you get a faulty bottle of wine. But it used to be 10% up to 10% of all bottles of wine which had corks in would suffer some kind of a taint from the cork itself, and that's a hideous number. It's now down to sort of maybe about 1 to 3% with natural cork. How do we know that this is a faulty corked wine?
Because it tastes awful.
It smells. The first thing that happens when your wine starts to get a cork taint fault is actually the fruit flavours start to disappear. You're left with the sensation of acidity and tannin, but the fruit flavours go, and that's before you really start noticing the presence of the smell. But we can detect a drop of the liquid TCA in a swimming pool size. So it takes only the tiniest amount from this thing that's living in the cork itself.
How do you know that? Have you had a swimming pool full of wine that was corked?
It smells musty. It smells of a wet cellar, wet cardboard that's been sort of sat there for a while. And it's not going to that sort of stable smell. If you've got the kind of stably horsey smell, that's probably Brettanomyces fault. But this is undeniably cork taint. And
wet dog, and wet
dog.
cardboard, and wet badger, and...
In the name of science, I'm going to try tasting it.
And this is why Alex, is this your favourite wine?
This one isn't. It's worse on the nose than it is in the mouth, but it's not great. Yeah. So we can find another bottle of that. Take that one. We'll find another bottle of it, and just be very happy that this one didn't go out to anybody else.
Okay, cool. So, the one for the show was corked. Helpful. So we've gone and nicked a pack from what we have beautifully produced for everyone, which should be winging its way through your doors to drink. So, and do what every good person does and drink from the stash.
Already looks better.
There you are, sir.
Thank you. Right. So let's try it again. We had to go and wash our glasses
and our mouths.
Thank you. That's better.
Oh, that's why it's your favourite.
That's what. Yeah.
Because if that last bottle was your favourite, we got bigger problems.
To be fired. Yeah. Just the sort of
There's fruit.
There's fruit
There's
still,
fruit.
which is and is quite incredible because you know the first things that do fade away are the fruity ones, fruity flavours, but that is just still punching through with that beautiful red fruit, sort of dark cherry, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, do we want to talk a little bit about the winery first, or do you want to jump straight into your WSET tasting note?
Ah, it's a warm hug. No, let's talk a little bit about the winery. So, I think Manzanos, I presume, it is a family-run winery, as we love to feature, and it's now in the hands of two brothers, I believe.
Yeah,
isn't it?
fifth generation.
They have around about 250 to 300 hectares of vines, including some of the very oldest in the whole of Rioja. And given how long Rioja's been a really prestigious region, that's saying something. So, primarily, they are down in the Oriental region of Rioja. Rioja is split into, is it 4 different?
You've got three main regions. You've got Rioja Alta, Rioja Alavese, and then Rioja Oriental, which used to be Rioja Baja. So Oriental Baja interchangeable depending whether you're from 2022 or 1984.
Quite right. And as we've said, this is 100% aged in oak barrels, all in 225 litre standard oak barrels. 70% of it is French oak, and the other 30% is American oak. So hopefully, when we look at this, it'll all be a bit faded after 21 years, but we might be able to pick out some of the different notes of the French and the American oak in there. They obviously do lead to slightly different flavours, and that's what's lovely about this is it's not just a blend of grapes. It is a blend of different barrels, a blend of different ferments and different vineyards, and it's just bringing together into something which is just so skillfully done and just makes you feel so wonderful. And this shows off primary, secondary and tertiary notes. And how much would you pay for a 21-year-old bottle of a decent Bordeaux? It's going to be a lot of money.
Couple of quid.
Yeah, a couple of quid. And, you know, to be able to get such value from this.
Actually, I just want to clarify quickly. So this is in the Rioja aging hierarchy. This is the Gran Reserva. So you start with your Joven, which is no oak. You then sometimes Roble, depending where you are. You see a little bit of oak up to about 6 months. Then the first real one that people see is Crianza.
Yeah.
So you've got aging requirements on that. We then go to Reserva, which is longer aging requirements, and then we've got Gran Reserva, which is a 5-year aging process. And with this one, it's 3 years in barrel.
Yeah.
And then 2 years in bottle before release. And by before release, that's when it can leave the winery. Obviously, this has had 21 years before it's been released from the bottle.
Yeah.
But so the idea with that is a lot of wines are made so when they leave the winery, they're ready to drink.
Yeah.
It's not, take this Barolo, buy it for loads of money, and then lay it down for 52 years. So it's designed that when it does come out, it is drinkable. Does it develop? Absolutely, and we can see with this, outside of fortified, this is the oldest wine we've ever featured, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, certainly. We've done some pretty old ports and things, but and the other thing to say is that this is a blend of different winemaking techniques as well, because it's fermented first of all in stainless steel to help preserve the fruit. They then transfer it into concrete tanks to do the malolactic fermentation or conversion, depending on what side of the bed you woke up on, which is where we take all the malic acid, which tastes of sort of sour apples, and we turn it into a smoother lactic acid.
Lactic, like milk.
Creamy. Creaminess, yeah. So that goes on in concrete, and then of course it goes in to spend these 36 months in the oak barrels. 70% of them are new. You just think about the cost of that. It's an extraordinary cost to try to put into
what's also, as far as cost, it's 70% are new. So A, they can never be new again.
Nope.
And B, they're there for 3 years, so those barrels can't be used for something else.
Yeah, you've tied up that investment.
And not only the barrel, but the real estate. Those barrels have to stay somewhere, so you've got to have that wine sat in that barrel just
and particularly
done.
if you're in a hot country, which I don't know if you'd noticed, but Spain's pretty hot, you have to keep them temperature controlled as well. So it's got to be an underground one or a big warehouse with some air conditioning on. That is an immense cost. So there's a lot of money has gone into making this wine, and it's not reflected in the price at all. So
no, absolutely
quite wonderful.
should we talk through from the beginning? We've done WSET Level 2 a few times, and we thought, seeing, we're doing pre-recorded, so you can kind of pause and go backwards and forwards as you want to. We're going to do kind of the Level 3 systematic approach to tasting.
Yeah.
And I've got it in front of me down here, so you see me glancing down, just so I don't miss anything, because I go through, I kind of have my own little systems of how I taste and whatever, but I just want to make sure that we do it.
Why, just for people who haven't done this before, why is there a standardised approach to tasting wine? Is it just to try to sort of...
So with what you want to look at is, wines are so different, and this WSET systematic approach to tasting is kind of to allow to put every wine in the world on a scale, and it's got a place in that line. So you're comparing wines across the spectrum, because you put two wines together, you put two Pinot Grigios together, one will be lighter and one will be darker.
Yeah.
You're not going to say that's a light wine and that's a dark wine. They're both light, because you compare it to a aged oak Chardonnay, they are. So it's being able to put all the wines in a place.
Yeah.
When I talk about wine and wine, when I talk about wine and wine tasting, I use my jigsaw puzzle analogy. It's the biggest jigsaw puzzle you'll never finish, but once you've got the corners and the edges and there's this here, it's easier to put the next bit in. You talk about Rieslings being from dry to sweet, and if you taste an off-dry Riesling in this first one you've ever had, you're going to go, oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
If you've not compared it to anything else. So this systematic approach to tasting is to be able to compare all the wines in the world against one another and go, that's light, that's heavy, that's this, that's that, and then we have the conclusion, which is the blick, which is that balance, that length, that intensity, and that complexity, and whether it's poor, adequate, outstanding, whatever. And then we can, when we say a wine is outstanding, it's not because we go, wow, that's outstanding. It's because we've put all these pieces together and we said, well, the balance is here and the length is here, and we've done that. So outstanding it's a grade, it's not a feeling.
And
does that make sense?
There's no reason why, if someone tells you that a wine is outstanding, that you have to like it, or someone tells you a wine is poor, you are supposed to not like it. That's not the way it works. You like what you like, and that is fine. It's just simply, if you're going to judge wines, which Jamie does at a lot of these competitions, you have to be approaching it in a systematic way. Absolutely,
because it keeps the playing field as level as it can be for with these. So anyway, so we start with the wine and clarity.
Clarity is better than the other one.
Well, because it has some. So you can. It's good if you've got a white piece of paper or you've got some light above you that you can just kind of see. Clarity is, can you see straight through it? Is it hazy? Is this? Hazy can sometimes be a solid and faulty. Not always, as there's more natural wines and things like that
Sediment
running around.
Sediment is not a fault in wine.
Sediment is not a fault. Wine don't. But most people are finding and filtering, which takes those extra bits out. So generally you're looking for a clear wine that you can see straight through, and that's
of course the exception obviously to that is where you've got something that's aged over time. It might have been perfectly clear when they put it in the bottle, but over a bit of time some of those tannins have come together and formed something a bit heavier that just drops down.
But fingers crossed, if you've know your wine and you've got that sorted, you probably decanted it or poured it, and it shouldn't actually be in your glass. No. It might be in that last sip, but there we are. And it's not about whether it's really dark or not. It's not about colour. It's just, is it clear? Is there bits in it? Okay. And then we want to look at our intensity, and that's the intensity of the colour. Is it, is it really powerful and bright? Is it kind of dull? Is it faded? And for me,
how much of it can you sort of, really? Is it a punchy colour or?
Exactly. And for me, this is kind of medium-ish. But I think that I think when this was younger, it would have been a very, very intense, deep colour.
Colour does tend to decrease over time.
But in a red wine, colour will fade over age, and in a white wine, the wine will get darker. So they go opposite ways. So a white wine will go more golden, more amber, those kind of colours, and a red wine will become more bricky, more browny, more lighter kind of shades of red.
Browny sort of wine, isn't it? In fact, let's get a bit more technical, because I think we're sort of moving on to colour now.
So when we get on to colour, so we're a red wine, obviously, but you've got a scale at level 3, and you've got to pick one. So I can't say it reminds me of Dorothy's red slippers from Wizard of Oz. That's not on the scale. And that's hey, if you're trying to sell it to a customer, that's great, and you can do that. But in WSET, we start at, we've got red, purple, ruby, garnet, tawny, or brown, and those are the kind of options. And with WSET, you kind of got to pick one. You can't go, it's a tawny-ish purple brick brown. Yeah. No, that doesn't work. So you got to stick to your guns and go back. And it's not. There's no right or wrong answers, because there are wrong answers. But if you're close enough, no, it's not, and it's not got polka dots. But this for me is kind of starting to go a little bit tawny-ish. So I'm somewhere between. I'd probably stick garnet on this.
I'm into the sort of tawny on that, but you're better at this than me, so you're probably right. But
you said it. Okay, and then so that's really what we've got. And then is there any other observations? If
we didn't know what this was, that's a really good guide to tell you you're dealing with an old wine at this point.
Yeah, so you've got, and it's not really in WSET, but hey, if you've got a piece of white paper in front of you and you put it against there, you've got your colour in the middle, and then you go out to the meniscus, and the meniscus is that little bit around the edge. If you've got a very young wine, that will be translucent, clear. Once you get a bit of age, you see how that's almost starting to brown a little bit around the edge, so your meniscus will get a little bit darker. So if you're trying to distinguish, is that colour because of age or grape varietal, that look at the meniscus can give you a clue, because if it's still quite clear, you're going to be dealing with that colour. So this may be like, do you think Nebbiolo, for example, because it's that kind of colour. But because it's got that darker meniscus, you might be thinking, it's got a little bit of age, so it could be something else. And then we'd look, if we were doing a sparkling wine, we'd go, is there any bubbles? What kind of bubbles are there? You can have a swirl go, is there a lot of legs? You might go, is there much extraction? And extraction is kind of where the tears will be this deep, dark purple. Not much, it's kind of clear as it runs back down. There's not a lot going on. So that's kind of what you're doing with the appearance.
People talk a lot about the legs on the wine, and how it's related to alcohol. Well, that's one of the things it's related to, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's related to everything: alcohol, sugar,
viscosity.
So it can give you some clues, but it's worth noting. Going, does it? Are the legs long? Does it take a long time or not a long time?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't make any assumptions on what the wine's going to be at this point.
I mean, if it's starting to really, really slowly drip down, you're probably dealing with something that's quite sweet.
But we wouldn't make that assumption on the thing. The thing is, a lot of time with like blind tastings is people put their nose and go, I think that's what it is, and then they spend the entire rest of the tasting trying to force it into that box when all the clues are leading you to a completely different place. So then we go on to the nose. Once again, the first thing, is it clean? Is it faulty?
And that was just this wonderful moment where I was just sat there going, oh no. And the difference between those two wines. In fact, I'm going to get it just side by side, even just from the bottle you can tell. Wow. You don't want to smell it again, do you? It's it's a completely different wine. It's just completely different. It's mad. A tiny little bug that's living in that cork. But to be fair, it's living there for nearly 20 years, so...
Clean?
No,
it's clean.
No, it's clean. Okay, so it's not faulty, which is good. So it smells of things like fruit and vanilla and leather, not wet dogs.
Exactly. But then where we are is we then go to the intensity. And when we do level 2, you've got light, medium, and pronounced. That's what you got. With this, you've got a little bit of wiggle room. You've got light, medium, pronounced, and then either side of medium, you've got medium plus, medium minus. So you can go. And for me, this kind of medium.
I was going to say medium plus. I'm not sure why.
I'm not sure why either, but you can say what you like. But
then each person does have different sensitivities to different chemicals, and so.
Yeah, absolutely. And this WSET line is your own line. And if you're used to drinking just Pinot Noir all day, this might be medium plus. If you're used to drinking Primitivo and Barolo all day, this might be, compared to what you drink. So as you taste more things and you try more wines, you get, it just makes you better calibrated for wherever you want to go with it. Okay, and
does the sensation of alcohol that you sometimes, the smell of alcohol you get, does that change the intensity? I mean, would you figure that into your intensity? Because I think I'm getting a bit of the smell of the alcohol coming off it.
You've got to bear in mind that, you know, alcohol is that kind of, it's that feeling of heat.
Yeah.
So the intensity should be that the power of either the fruit, the secondary or the tertiary. So it shouldn't be about, you know, whiskey. You know, if you smell a whiskey, you've got to take that away. Because otherwise all whiskies would be extremely powerful.
True.
Yeah, and it's not about that alcohol, it would be about the smoke or the peatiness or the toffee or that kind of stuff. So you've got to look beyond that and go from there.
Okay.
So we then need to have a look at like our aroma characteristics, whether we've got primary.
I myself from drinking it.
Yeah, exactly. Can't bloody wait, can he? So you've got your primary, which are your fruit flavours. And at WSET Level 3, we're looking at clusters. So you've got to start with your main cluster, whether it's red fruit, black fruit, green fruit, tropical fruit, yeah?
Yep.
And then within that, dial down to what it is. So red fruit isn't good enough anymore.
No.
You know, like we talk, citrus isn't good enough.
No.
So you would say, for a white wine, you'd say citrus, but then you'd have to say, is it lemon, is it lime, is it gooseberry, whatever. Yeah?
This is the part of the WSET Level 3 exam, which I think sends horrors, you know, sends shivers down the spines of those who are about to do it. You actually get tasted and you are marked on your thought process and using the right groups, the right words for it, particularly in the colours and the flavours and things like that. But yeah, you have to...
Yeah, there's a very kind of set vocabulary that you need to use and learn, and I found that quite difficult when I went into WSET because I started Court of Master Sommeliers, where it's a slightly different language, and I'm like, it's this and this and this. They're like,
no,
you're right, but you're wrong.
Yes, you don't get the points.
So primary, what do we got?
So
main cluster
for me is the red fruit.
Okay, and within that cluster?
It's things like cherry and blackcurrant I'm getting.
Okay, cool.
Don't know if that's
yeah, absolutely.
the same, but I've got it reminds me of cassis, really quite strongly.
Cassis. Is cassis red or black? Black fruit.
Cassis is black, isn't it? I suppose.
So we've got a red fruit cluster, and this is where we've got to pick. So we can have both.
Good point. Yeah.
We can have both. So we've got red fruits, absolutely, which you know, raspberry, strawberry, cranberry, that kind of stuff. Then, so if you had just said cassis, without having put your black fruit cluster up, you might not have got any points for that because it's not. Yeah. So we're just going to be. It's a bit geeky, it's a bit whatever. No, and when you're drinking with your friends, doesn't matter. Okay, so we've got some reds and black fruit. Then have we got any secondary?
I'm not getting anything like, you know, the other things you'd get from those primary characteristics, things like green flavours, herbaceousness.
Green flavours, herbaceous. Okay, so if you're saying herbaceous, what you got?
I'm not getting anything like that.
Okay, so things we might be looking at for these groups: red fruit, black fruit, dried fruit, cooked fruit, red fish, blue fish. Sounds like a Dr. Seuss thing,
does sound like a Dr. Seuss thing, yes.
Herbal, pungent spice, if you've got anything like black or white pepper or licorice. And then they've got an other for things like flint, whetstones, wetwall, that kind of stuff.
So one of the top giveaways, if you're drinking something like a Cabernet Franc or a Cabernet Sauvignon, you might get this very strong sort of green peppery smell that we associate with, you know, tomato leaves, and so you can also get these in. But I'm also not getting any of the things like eucalyptus, so it's probably not from Australia or South Africa. So there's lots of clues starting to come in if you were trying to identify this wine.
Do you know how I identify it? I read the tasting booklet.
Very helpful.
Very helpful, always. Okay, so then we've got secondary. And secondary are the winemaker decisions. We talk things about oak, whether it goes through malolactic conversion, whether there's any yeast, batonnage, that kind of stuff.
Yeast, they stir around the dead yeast.
So at level 3, you've got to be able to pick those out as separate things. Yeah. So it's definitely that oakiness in there.
Yeah, but it's not the kind of in-your-face vanilla thing that you'd be
No, it's
expecting.
more of the charred wood, the nutmeg, the smoke, those kind of things. There's not this big vanilla sweetness in there. There's a little hint, and it gives it that kind of roundness. But MLF, there's
It's a bit creamy.
There's a little bit of creaminess to it, but a lot of that kind of will fade away over time anyway. If this was much younger, it would be easier to pick out those yeast things and those MLF things, I would think. So not a huge amount, a bit of clove, bit of smoke.
Yep.
And then we've got tertiary.
And you might also get like things like the coconut from the American oak in particular, but I, as we thought, it has sort of faded away a bit, and I'm not really getting coconut. But it's probably in there somewhere.
And then we go on to tertiary. And tertiary is developmental characteristics. So this is where you get either your dried fruit or your leather thing. And there's different things. So your clusters on this are rather than going fruit, non-fruit, we've got developmental fruit development, which is things like fig, prune, dried blackberry, dried cranberry, cooked blackberry, that kind of stuff. And then we've got bottle age, which is stuff like leather, forest floor, the earth mushrooms, tobacco, wet
And all
leaves,
of these require just the
meaty.
tiniest amount of oxygen to be coming in over time. You get too much and the wine goes off, but you get just the tiniest amount. And so winemakers spend a lot of time trying to match the cork or the closure with the actual nature of the wine. It's not an exact science, but the more oxygen you let in, the faster it will develop those flavours and lose the primary flavours. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And then we get drinking.
Then we get drinking.
Again. So for here, a lot of things with the flavour profile is just confirming what we've smelt.
Yeah.
Are there red fruits? Yes. Are there black fruits? Yes. You know, the ones where... Is there that little bit of secondary, little touch of clove? Yes. And then there's a lot of those tertiary flavours that we talked about. A lot of the fruit is dried. It's dried red currants, it's dried cranberries, it's got this crunchiness about it. It's got that bottle age of the leather, the smoke, the tobacco, it's got that kind of stuff. So we kind of agree with that. But then what we want to do is the sensory analysis. So we've got our sweetness. And our sweetness runs from dry to luscious. We're dry, off dry, medium sweet, sweet, or luscious as your options.
You're luscious.
Well, it's like to say, these are the things that are important. So sweetness we've done before. You can stick your tip of your tongue in it and see if there's any.
And it helps to pinch your nose if you're going to stick your tongue in, because otherwise you can be tricked by the sort of fruity flavours. You've got to focus on what your tongue is doing. Sticking in.
There you go.
That is dry.
That is dry. So, and that's the thing. Sweetness isn't about fruit or fruit flavours. It is about whether there's sugar or no sugar. And there is no sugar, or very, very little sugar, not detectable sugar. Okay, we then look at our acidity, and acidity runs from low, medium minus, medium plus, high. And that's how much, if you have a little sip and put your head down, you can feel the saliva running. I would guess this is probably going to be medium plus.
I'd say medium now. It's not doing a massive amount.
Medium we are. Tannins sit on the same scale. Just and tannins is where it kind of dries out the back of your throat. But still a decent amount. They're just very well balanced, because you still get that dryness, but it's not a painful drying.
No, it's much smoother, and that's as they've come together over time. They form these chains, polymerization. The individual tannins from the woods and from the grape skin, they'll come together and they'll form something completely new, and it's just smoother, but it's still there, and it still is a good match for food.
And that sits for me on a medium plus.
Lovely. Yeah, I'd say that too.
Okay, and then we have the alcohol, and you've got low, medium, high on this, and low is 11 and lower, high is 14 and above, so it's kind of like factual as it is, but you know, you can't make a comment of how well integrated you think it is, if you think there's too much heat or not heat. So this, as a fact, sits at 30.5%, so it sits at medium
and it's in
and it
balance
feels
with everything.
medium. So I'm happy with that. We then go into the body, and this is that weightiness, how much it hangs out, how much it coats your palate. And this is from light, medium minus, medium plus, full. I think when this was younger, it would have been more towards the full side, the medium plus. But there's a balance that I think with the age, the body has lightened a little bit. And I sit this quite right bang down the middle at medium. Mousse doesn't really matter because that's all about bubbles, and we ain't got any bubbles to worry about.
There is no mousse loose about this feast.
Oh my word!
Flavour intensity.
Once again, this is the light to pronounced with the selection of mediums in the middle.
Medium plus? Or just medium?
Just medium, I think.
Yeah, again, you have to keep recalibrating yourself to, one extent you've got your factory-made Soave, and one extent you've got your like handmade young, super in-your-face, like Brunello di Montalcino, you know.
Exactly.
So, yeah, on that scale, yep, absolutely medium.
Yep.
You're quite right.
Flavour characteristics, we've done that. We've gone through them. And
Mixture
then,
of primary, secondary and tertiary, which is great.
and then the finish is short, medium minus, medium plus, or long. And that is how long the flavours hang out for, okay, that you can still taste the flavour. Because once the flavours are gone, you'll still taste the acid, you'll still taste the alcohol, you'll still taste that. But how long do you still taste the blackcurrant or the cranberry or the spice? Because you get with an old wine, you'll get that feeling of like the tannins will hang out for a really, really long
The tannin
time.
is still there.
Still there, but how
But
soon?
the flavour is gone.
Yeah, medium.
Yeah.
Medium.
I was waiting for you to say that. Straight down the line.
Straight down the line. So we then go to our conclusions. So we look at the quality level. We can either be faulty, poor, acceptable, good, very good, or outstanding.
I know what this one was.
That was faulty.
That was faulty.
Well done. He's in. So we look at the balance first. So where do you think the balance was?
So what's our scale?
Faulty, poor, acceptable, good, very good,
Oh, I
outstanding.
thought that was just for overall, was it? Okay, no. I thought the balance was, I think, very good.
Very good. Length? Same scale.
Length, good.
Good. Intensity? I think very good
I was
intensity.
going to say very good on intensity as well, yeah.
Yep. And then complexity?
I'd say outstanding because it's got multiple clusters in both all the different sort of elements, and it's got primary, secondary, tertiary. I think that's outstanding.
Okay, so we've got 2 very goods, 1 good, and 1 outstanding. So if we sit down the middle, we have a very good wine. So in the scheme of things,
very good wine. You heard it from him.
Would we conclude, and do you conclude at home, that this, in the world of all the wines, is very good?
Drop it in the comments. Let us know what you think.
See, so there we go. And then we look at the readiness level of drinking. Is it too young, can drink now but has aging potential, drink now not suitable for further aging, or too old?
For me, that's drink now, because I'd say much beyond that, maybe we'll lose the primary fruits.
Yeah, I think with that, I don't think there is much more aging potential. Yeah, if you don't need to drink it tomorrow, but a year or two, you're going to start seeing some of that primary fade away. So yeah, definitely not too young. Can drink now. Aging potential, no aging potential in this, in my opinion. So it's a drink now, not suitable for further aging, but it's not too old.
No.
So we've got a very good wine that you should drink now.
How about that?
Can't go wrong with that.
Can't go wrong with that.
I know that was maybe a touch
Quite
long-winded, but hey, because it's not live, you're able to fast forward, so that's all right. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight that when we talk about wines, how we're scoring them and what to look for, because you take that final conclusion of that balance, that length, that intensity, and that complexity, and if they're all outstanding, you've got an outstanding wine. But if I say, you can't just score and go, oh, what should I have for dinner today? Oh, I'd like a very good wine. You've got to have some context with that. So I would like this is a very good Pinot Grigio. This is an outstanding Pedro Jimenez. This is a poor Shiraz. Yeah. So there's always going to be that little caveat on the end. It's not like, here's a list of very good wines, drink one. Yeah?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Top tip.
After Alex's wonderful choice of a corked wine for wine 4, we go into something that's not corked for wine number 5. So heading to Argentina, and this is a red blend by Karim Musi. We've done a couple of his wines previously, but I've always loved his wines because of what he does. He's a nice bloke, he makes good wine, delicious, and a big part of the reason we do what we do now is because of his wines. For those who remember the beginning of 2020, when Jamie and Alex decided to open a little wine shop in Tring.
That seems a while ago, doesn't it?
We actually got to do a live event.
Yeah.
We did a live event, but it was as the pandemic was starting to spread across the world. So
Yeah, it was just sort of initially.
travel was slowing down, and Karim was meant to be joining us at the winery to do a tasting with us, and we had 40 people, and we'd sold tickets, and it was all this kind of good stuff. And then it was announced that he wasn't going to be travelling, and we went, holy moly, what shall we do?
Yeah. Do we have to refund everyone? We can't afford to.
So we had a little brainstorm and talked to the guys at Condor Wine who import his wines, and say, well, what can we do? Is there any way Karim could make us some little videos from the winery to kind of talk through? And they're like, well, let's see, I'm sure we can. So we ended up with 3 videos from Karim for the 3 different sets of wines he did, and we sat in and we poured the wine, and then we directed everybody up to the big screen in the winery to listen to what he had to say about the wines. And it was at that point, and this was before we'd been forced into lockdown or anything, we realised that we could do wine tastings with winemakers
virtually
without the winemaker having to be in the building. I love this wine. So this is great. So this is non-vintage. So this isn't done by vintage by year. This is done by edition.
Yeah.
So it's different grapes picked from different plots, picked in different years, vinified in different years, and then blended together. And why I love this is because so many wines go to, it must come from this grape, from this place, from this vineyard, from this, and that's that. And it has to be so
trying to be sort of rarer and more prescriptive and more specific has become this kind of new elite thing. It's following the French chain of hierarchy, isn't it? That there's France, then there's Burgundy, then there's the Côte de Nuit, or then there's this village, and then there's one vineyard in this village, and then there's the best vineyard in this village, and then there's the best of the best vineyard in that village. And that is, as you go up that pyramid, things get more expensive. So a wine that doesn't just come from one place, or one grape, or 1 year even, is unheard of.
It is.
Apart from champagne.
But also, it's not because you can get it from all over. It's not mass production. There's 7,300 bottles of this made. No. It's still very, very small production. But he can pick the best of best, and it's called Alandes because it's all across the Andes. So it's that entire ridge. It's not just Mendoza. It's not just Salta. It's not just wherever. And you're a Bordeaux style blend. So we're mainly Malbec in here, but it's Malbec, Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc. So you've got all 5 of the red Bordeaux grapes in there.
That's so perfumed.
Decadent, rich, delightful, and it shows. Yes, is Malbec all about Argentina and Argentina all about Malbec? Yes, it is. But it showcases that you can do some really cool stuff. I got to taste this. Karim was over in the country a couple of months ago. He popped down the winery, had a nice little chat, tasted a few things. So this is epic. He's now started doing these like single project like Cab Franc things that are like 40, 50 quid a bottle, but absolutely mind blowing. And I've not had a wine from him that I've not only enjoyed, but kind of got the reason behind it. He's so with this project, so he's got his red blend. He then makes a white blend, and then he's got another red blend called Concrete Tank because it's done in a concrete tank. So it's not as rich and decadent. It's a little bit more kind of like the fruit's a little bit fresher, a little bit less jammy.
More of a kind of sommy sort of wine.
Yeah, it's a more kind of, just sit and drink it. This, I think, cries out for a bit of food, bit of steak, red meat, grilled.
I tell you what, that picanha steak that we had the other day would have worked perfect.
It's got a bit of heft about it. But this still starts in concrete vats to keep that first freshness of fruit as it ferments. And then goes into oak afterwards to bring that richness and that roundness and bring it all out. And it's weird. You say 14.5%, and a lot of people go 14.5% and scream that that's really high. It's not as high as it used to be, if that makes sense. Everything is creeping up a little bit. It's
remember that Pinot Noir we tried from Essex that was 14.5%. Yeah. An English red wine that's 14.5%.
And something as light as a Pinot Noir. This is a lot of big, bold flavour. So it kind of...
This is balanced.
It all comes together really, really quite nicely.
So what is it you need to balance high alcohol? It's tannins, isn't it, and fruit. If you've got a good level of fruit and a good level of tannin, then it masks the fact you've got a higher level of alcohol. If you've got a sort of weaker, more watery wine, then just the alcohol will stand out.
Absolutely. So, you know, it can either be fruit or sugar or tannin. You just need something, so, you know, sweet and acidity generally balance.
Yep.
Tannin and alcohol will balance. But it's not, there's not only two things on this seesaw. It's not one and that's that and that has to balance with that. This is the joy of winemaking. What makes each wine and each bottle and each story special is it's, maybe balance isn't the right word. It's the relationship between sweet, sour, acid, tannin, oak, vanilla, fruit, all these things.
Fruits, you know,
so, yeah, I think balance might overly simplify. It's not, oh, if it's too heavy on here, we put a bit more on here. You know, we're not putting two badgers on a seesaw. You know, that's not what we're looking for.
But I think that's what's absolutely fascinating about in particular this wine, because what you're tasting here, we talk so often about like wine needs to have this sense of place. Well, you know, this definitely tastes of the Andes Mountains. It tastes of Argentinian flavours. But what you are tasting here in this wine is one man's flavour preferences. He is assembling together wines from different years, from different grapes, from different vineyards, from different fermentation techniques, and he's bringing them together to make the best thing that he can make. And it's a really wonderful thing. I don't think we should be ashamed to say that we are. It doesn't feel as pure as this wine can only come from this tiny place in the world. Well, hey, what's rarer than a field? One person who's got that set of skills to produce this wine.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a bit philosophical.
That was, and I'm kind of a bit lost. I was about to say I couldn't say it better myself, but that would give you too much praise. So I've got to think of a better way to say it. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. You know, there's rarity of place, and that's great. But that can be up, down, indifferent, and that's only going to be one thing.
Yeah.
Where you've got, you know, the ideology that Karim has to make great wine for great people, live life like a rock star, happy days.
And his sense of taste and his personality, these things which are not, you can't, when a lot of winemaking become very scientific, you look for this quantity of this chemical, that quantity of that chemical, mix them together.
He is the epitome of art and science combined, that he's got access to phenomenal fruit. And there's so many winemakers that, you know, the winemaker knows, oh, it all happens in the vineyard. I'm like, well, if it all happens in the vineyard, why bother being a winemaker? What are you doing? Sorry to all you winemakers out there.
He's so, I mean, it's not that he ignores the science, he's so on the artistic side.
But he's also, he is unashamedly his own brand.
Yeah.
You know, you look at his, you know, the videos on YouTube, you look at his, it's very much, he is front and centre of his brand, and he's such a, you know, larger than life character who loves his wine, does really cool stuff, but also wants you to enjoy it. If you pick this up and go, I don't particularly like this one, why? Oh, it's too heavy. Try his Las Poetas blend, you know, it's a little bit lighter in style. Oh, you know, if I want this, you know, the white of this is one of my favourite white wines on the planet. It's a Bordeaux style white, Semillon Sauvignon. I've got this beautiful richness about it. But yeah, this, you know, small production, 7,300-ish bottles. There's not a lot about, and it's, for something that's as rare as it is at 20 odd quid a bottle, it's offers great value for money. And I think what we've got to look at is sometimes we pay a lot of money for a name or a region or a place, and
a chateau.
Yeah, it's, you know, the same as, you know, you put a little tick on the side of a pair of trainers and suddenly it's worth a lot more money. This is a Bordeaux style blend, and I know, being Argentinian, stylistically it's different, but try and get me a quality bottle of Bordeaux that drinks like that for 20 quid.
Yeah.
Very tough. I'm not saying they don't exist.
No.
But really tough. If a quality, you know, a bottle of this quality was a, you know, Californian Meritage blend, it would be 70 quid.
Meritage is what they started calling Bordeaux blends after they stopped calling them Bordeaux because,
or clarets.
Clarets, yeah. It's
So if that bottle of wine came out of California, and I know there's land costs and all that, and there's 100 reasons why there's a price in a bottle, it would be 3 times that price without a question of doubt for the quality.
Probably a kind of $100 bottle of wine, isn't it?
Yeah,
easy.
I think that's
and the prices are going like that still because they just are.
They can, because people are buying them.
And people say that where they are up in the Andes is almost like the New Napa Valley, and I think you should think of it that way. It's got that same potential.
It's got that potential, and they are, outside of the wine stuff, they are doing a really good job with their wine tourism there, that you can go and visit, and it's set up for people to go and hang around the vineyards and stay and eat some great food, great wines, and you talk about the style of food, you talk about Argentinian food and the gaucho, the barbecue, that kind of stuff. These wines are made for that, absolutely made for that. So,
and I think one of the things I really like about this is because it's going heavier than a typical Bordeaux blend on the Malbec, it's less austere. And you've got that greenness. You've got more of the blue fruits coming through, more of the blue fruits, more of the kind of, and where it's, rather than that kind of greenness, it's more, rather than being green bell pepper and grass, it's more of the kind of herbaceous green, sagey. Yeah, it's enough for it to lift it.
It's almost like refreshing. It's like garden, like cooking herbs, rather than it smells like you're in a field. Of bell peppers.
Makes sense. Yeah, no, I'm absolutely with you on that, and some of those particularly the French ones, but also some of the Napa ones that are pretty much 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, are really a bit intense on that.
But with any wine, it's about
oxypyrazines.
There he is.
There he is.
Yeah. Alex Taylor's big word of the day. But with any wine, it's about what you're looking for. I love this because I love the wine, I love the story, I love what Karim does, and it's also got a special place in my heart from building my business, and phenomenal wines.
And I think we need to look at the winemakers more. We're starting to see a trend in wine that, because all of these chateaus and everything are quite anonymous. Yes, you might know the region, you might know the town, you might know the place, whatever, but it's every other thing has been going to talk about who created this. This is it, and instead the names that we're starting to see on the bottles of wine are Ian Botham, Kylie Minogue, Graham Norton. Is there a place for the cult of the winemaker, for that celebrity? Because it's you've got it with celebrity chefs. You'd know, you want to taste the food that's been made by a Gordon Ramsay or whatever.
That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because you look at a lot of take Karim for example.
Yep.
This isn't Karim's only project.
No.
He consults for lots of other wineries. So is that kind of the way of the future, that you go, I like this particular winemaker style, he creates an XYZ style, and whether he's making that style in Mendoza in Argentina or somewhere else in Argentina, or over, he's gone to Chile, or he's doing a project in Australia. Do you want to drink that person? Because,
and that's why it says at the top of his bottle, even though this is the project, it says very clearly there, Karim Moussi winemaker, Karim Moussi, and just around the top of the foil it also said Karim Moussi winemaker. So he's putting his brand front and central. I wish him the very best of luck with it, because he's making some cracking wines.
Fantastic, and that's why.
However,
one of my top picks.
It is a good top pick. But I'm going to move on to a slightly different one, and for this we're going to one of my other real recommendations for value for money, which is South Africa. South Africa's a country which is going through a lot of difficult times. Its economy locally has been really struggling, and if you go over there and you buy these wines in person at the winery, they are freaking believably good value.
Yes.
It is. I mean, over here, after they've been imported, of course, it starts getting a bit more comparable with other regions, but they are so cheap and so good, and it's such an important part of the local area around sort of Cape Town and going a bit to the east of that, that you've just got to go and seek it out. They have to compete by doing good quality, because for so many years they flooded the market during the apartheid days. All they could compete on was just volume and cheapness. And it was a really tough period for them. So now you're getting great experimentation going on. You're getting urban wineries popping up. We've done a few of those kind of things before. We've got winemakers from different cultural backgrounds coming in. You know, people who are natives who haven't just aren't just trying to copy things. And there's so many cool experimental things going on. And of course they're allowed to do that because their rules aren't as strict as a lot of the old world places. But it is great value. So I'm going to go and get a bottle of it, but we're going to go to Stellenbosch, which is freaking beautiful.
Sounds good.
So wine number 6, Tokara, and this is possibly one of the nicest places I have ever been in my life. And Stellenbosch is just a world of beauty. It is some of the finest wine estates in the whole world, surrounded by some of the most beautiful scenery. And it's not just beautiful scenery in terms of mountains and valleys and all of our usual things we like to talk about, but these even have completely unique flora and fauna. And you talked about how many different species of animals there were in the western side of Australia, down near the Margaret River. Well, I mean, the flowers you see, the feinbush, it is so beautiful. And if you're going to talk about terroir, there is a massive impact between this interaction between what grows there, all surrounding the vineyards, and what the wines taste like. So this Stellenbosch, I think, is perhaps the finest place for that I've been to for growing an awful lot of wines, and it's certainly the best value. So that's why I had to come here, and it is a place that we visited on in our honeymoon. This particular estate owns one of the mountains, and it wraps its way, and the vineyards go right up the side of the mountain, and you've got these beautiful different sites. Some of them are south facing, or some of them are north facing, and you've got all different aspects that they're working with. They grow everything from they do Sauvignon, they do Chardonnay, they do Cabernet, which is epic, and then they do this, which is Syrah. And Syrah is one of my favourite grapes. Again, it's like we've just said, we've consciously hidden away from Cabernet, haven't we? Both Franc and Sauvignon varieties.
To be frank, yes.
To be frank, because I just think Syrah is just lush. It's so lush. It's the fact that you've got this combination of this intense fruit and this pepperiness, which is what makes it work so beautifully with food. But Tokara are a brilliant estate. We were very fortunate to have Karl Lambour, who's the CEO of the whole project, came over, and he is about 18 feet tall, approximately, give or take. No exaggeration.
Well,
Probably
compared to you,
man
yes.
I've met. And I once rode in a boat with a guy who was more than 7 foot. That's another story. I'll do that another day.
That's not.
That's another day. But yes. So Tokara, they also have this incredible restaurant which sits right at the top of their Chardonnay vineyard and looks down the valley, all the way to Table Mountain. And as far as views go in the world, that's pretty perfect. So you can go and you have almost as good as Leighton Buzzard Industrial Estate. Yeah, that good. And you can have this stunning Michelin quality food with all paired with their estate wines. And so this is their estate reserve collection Syrah. And well, I mean, what do you think? I picked a good one here, haven't I?
They're wines across the board, and for all clarity and transparency, we have done 3 of their wines over the last 2 tastings. We did 2 with our Discover series with Bright, and our top picks, we could have swapped potentially the Syrah out for the Cab or in for the Shen, and the wines just sing of where they are, where they're from, their variety, the care in winemaking, and just absolutely decadent. I just think it's just a bit fun to do something from South Africa that's not Chenin Blanc and not Pinotage to show, what else grows, whatever else does well. proper family estate. The names, after the owner's two kids, Thomas and Kara. So that's how ingrained it is in families.
I genuinely thought it was some
it.
kind of beautiful local native word from one of the local dialects.
That means around the mountainsides.
Yes, something with a proper spiritual side to it. No, it's the kids' names. Okay, fair enough. But despite that, it had another name. It's been around for quite a long time, and it got renamed. But they've really focused in on quality. And again, they are just trying to work their way to the top of the chain. And yeah.
And I think that's the thing that, once again, when we talk about the price of this, is it a cheap bottle of wine? No. But I think we talk about countries and go, oh, that's expensive for South Africa, or that's expensive for Australia, or it's expensive, whatever we say. This is Syrah. And if we take the best Syrahs in the world, and once again, stylistically it's different. I'm not saying it's Hermitage and it's an Hermitage replacement, but if we're growing Syrah in the Northern Rhone,
which is the classic place where you find
you're spending money like this. The top Australian Shirazes, same grade, your Penfold, things like that. Hundreds of pounds a bottle. So we can't just go, South African wine should be X price, or this wine should be X price. There's so many different things, and we go, South Africa is massive. That's like saying European wine should all be this.
Yeah.
You've got so many great regions. You've got Stellenbosch, Robertson, Olifantsberg, Paarl, Elgin, and we're hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles apart. We don't compare French wines to Spanish wines to Italian wines. Really, they're their own thing. And South Africa is big enough that each of these regions could be a European country almost.
But I think what I found most astonishing was just how quickly it changed as well. So even with the regions which aren't far apart, like to go from Constantia to Stellenbosch is not a long journey. So you if you start in Cape Town, you just go just down to Constantia. That is incredibly close to Cape Town. It's completely different. And then you go inland and up a little bit north to Stellenbosch. Totally different again. But then you go over the mountain ridge into Franschhoek. Cool road, but the climate is totally different. And then you get to the coast and you get these pockets of the air which just sit there and provide ideal place. You're going from a place which is brilliant for Cabernet, which needs to be really warm and ripe to get rid of the green characteristics, to a place where Pinot thrives. And it's not actually, a lot of these things are so close. Epic adventure, and you get epic adventures in a country which has epic landscapes, and in epic landscapes you get epic wines. And this is great.
So let's go to the interview.
Sounds good. So I'm here with Karl from Tokara Estate in Stellenbosch, South Africa.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we are going to be tasting the Syrah. Now, I noticed that you've called it a Syrah and not a Shiraz. I see both terms used in South Africa. Why did you go for Syrah on this one?
Because we're pretentious. No, it's quite interesting. So we have only about 3 blocks of Shiraz on the estate. The 2 blocks that are more generous in terms of their fruitiness and lower tannin quality, we take those into our premium range, and we refer to it as Shiraz because it really is fruit forward, soft tannins, and very much in the Australian style of Shiraz. With the single block that only gives us 4,000 bottles, it's really a little vineyard that's perched on the side of the cliff, really rocky soils, which restrains the exuberant growth that Shiraz normally has. Gives us very small berries, loose bunches. This is about 30% whole bunch as well, so we've got some really ripe stalks that have been used in the fermentation that gives you that wonderful spiciness and adds even more textural weight to the entire canvas of the wine. So hence the more Rhone-styled wine versus the more New World expression of Shiraz, and it's a synonym. Obviously, it's not to confuse, but maybe to define stylistic differences.
Yeah, in the same way that Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio give you completely different wines, same grape. Yeah. So this is stylistically being inspired by France, being inspired by the Rhone Valley and places like Hermitage, where again it's quite steep slopes, and but you're saying small berries. Does that give you kind of a more fruity flavour?
No, so smaller berries would mean that you would have thick or relatively thicker skins in terms of the skin versus pulp ratio.
Okay.
So the moment you've got thicker skins, you have the flavonoids sit just below the skin level, so you get a high concentration of fruit flavors, you get a high concentration of color, and you get a high concentration of tannin. And tannins on Shiraz are always very fine. So for us, it's a more extractive process looking at the grapes, and the smaller the berry means you are going to have more of the things that matter. The larger the berry, you have more of one thing that you're not particularly looking for, which is juiciness. You want to have that concentration of flavor and color and aroma, and that you get from thicker skins, smaller berries.
Small berries, yeah. More you're right. It's just that ratio. Like, you know, if you've got a big berry, there's more pulp in the middle, and that is very simple stuff. It's sugar, it's water.
It's like a table grape.
Yeah, exactly.
But in a good way.
All of the cool stuff, less of the boring stuff, and you look at the colour of that. It's a really good deep colour on it, and
this is from the 2017 vintage, which 2015 came along, and in South Africa we all cheered and we went, we have a fantastic vintage. Wow, let's crow about it. Let's tell the world. And the moment we started sending out the emails came back to tell us that the rest of the world also had a fantastic vintage in 2015. So it was great for the consumer out there. 2015 was a spectacular vintage, basically all over the globe. 2017 hit us in South Africa. It was the first real vintage after our 4 years of drier conditions, where we got back to normality. And grapevines respond and adapt very quickly. And 2017 was off the charts. It was much improved on 2015, and we didn't think it could get any better. So this is one of those wines that has concentration and opulence, but still with those fine tannins.
So you've managed to get it out of those skins. So when you're doing the fermentation, and talk us through what happens. You've got these berries coming in. 30% of them are whole bunches, still with the stems attached to the grapes. They go down to the bottom and do something cool and funky.
So what would happen is we actually de-stem everything, so not whole bunches.
Okay.
So everything would be de-stemmed, and then what we'd do is we'd take the berries through a digital sorting process with digits.
Cool.
So we've got 10 people standing on each side of a sorting table that's vibrating. So we lose all the tiny little green berries that haven't ripened properly. They fall between slots, and then only the perfect ripe berries are kept, and anything that shouldn't be there is taken out. So I worked with a winemaker in France in 2006, and he says, you have to see the berries falling into the container like caviar. It's just got to be perfect little round spheres of deliciousness. And then we'll take, and we weigh the stalks, and we'll take 30% of the stalks that we've had, and we'll put clean stalks back into the tank to lend freshness, a little bit of acidity, and some zingy spice that comes through in the wine.
Gotcha. You don't want to get the green underripe stalks. Just go and chew on, a stalk.
Yeah, it's about ripeness. So every process that we do in terms of picking, in terms of deciding when to process, in terms of deciding what to add, is all about a level of ripeness that is perfect for the quality of the wine that we're making. And this gets fermented in large tanks with punch downs and pump overs and delistage and all those wonderful things. And then once that is finished, we take it off, press it, and we'll take it to barrel for the secondary fermentation, the malolactic fermentation, which allows really generous integration of the wood components with the wine. So it becomes seamless. And that's, as soon as you start removing some of those processes from the wine and allowing them to occur, and then adding the wood at a later stage, or putting the wine into wood at a later stage, you don't get the harmony that you're looking for. So the sooner you can start those processes together, the better the harmony at the end of the process.
Brilliant. And it's just an absolutely delicious wine. It's kind of walks this middle ground in terms of between a very old world style and a very new world style. You have perhaps more sort of accessible, delicious fruit flavours that are coming into there, and yet still with the structure and a bit of a kind of, you get a feeling of where it was made, that it was difficult coming in and with the tannins are smooth.
Always. With Shiraz, you can't go wrong. I always say, if you take Shiraz tannins on a scale of sandpaper. You've got Tanat on the one side, which is the roughest grain you could ever have. And right down here you have this fine water paper, this finest grit you can get, almost like an emery board, and that's where Shiraz sits. And funny enough, whether you pick Shiraz ripe or underripe, and some people like a fresher style so they don't go as ripe as perhaps we have, you still have fine tannins. It's a very noble variety to work with.
So it won't destroy the flavour of the food. It won't dominate over some of the more subtler flavours that we've got from those foods. But it's a good set of complements. It's got the fruit, and it has a little bit of pepper in there that just pairs beautifully with.
I think anything wild, like venison, as we were talking about, venison
would be great.
And especially, I mean, I'm not sure whether you get ostrich meat in the UK, but it is a delicious. It's very, very low in cholesterol, very, very low in fat,
super lean,
and super, super lean. But it is delicious, and it's got quite an iron-rich character when you cook it, and it pairs incredibly well with Shiraz. It's certainly something to try.
For sure, I like it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. We're going to go back to the studio and find out what you guys think. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Cheers.
Welcome back, and I hope you found that as enlightening. It's really, really exciting to get someone from winery actually into Tring Winery and not be over Zoom the whole time. So
as
it's really
much
good
as we'd love to go over to South Africa, it is a bit of a trek down there. But you should make that visit and come back bringing lots and lots of wine. Because,
and snacks and biltong.
Oh yeah, the biltong, yeah. And if you haven't seen our Braai video, there are some top tips on what to eat and what not to eat with South African wines. But if not, it's your club. Get in touch with us. We'll give you some lovely recommendations.
Yeah. Hopefully you've go to places and try wines and have these great stories that you can share. But the best wines you ever had shouldn't be this was the particular label. It's I was here with that person and this person and we did that and this was the bottle of wine we had. The wine should be part of the experience, not the reason for the experience. And what I'm hoping with the stories we've told today, that kind of gives that little bit of a feeling of why we do what we do and why we think it's important to get cool wines out to people and get you introduced to the winemakers and try new things. And
I don't think it's been a while since we've done 6 wines which are so different from each other and have literally nothing tying them together apart from us, which is quite fun. It's a nice thing.
That's a mucho problem.
It's a big problem, but yeah, I mean, from the classic dry, clean crystal rich Soave that we had there onto the bonkers Derringstone, a totally different thing to pretty much anything. If you see a wine like that on sale in the supermarket, come and talk to me because I won't believe you. I just won't believe you. Then the Vasse Felix Chardonnay.
Beautiful richness, great history, great story, and just pioneering for a whole new region of wine.
I couldn't agree more. A 21-year-old Rioja. What can you say?
Still showing great power, great elegance, great family story. Then, Alandes, it doesn't all have to come from one place to be great, and winemaker brand.
The Rockstar winemaker brand, I love it. And
then Alex got a chance to tell you where he went on his honeymoon wine.
What, the Maldives? I did that as well. There's another story there, but we're not going to go into that because that I just think what a wine to finish on because it is powerful, smooth at the same time. It has enough spice to go with that classic South African barbecue food. And if you ever do get a chance, do go to the winery there. Don't just do buy their wines because if you like that, because I think it's fantastic. But go to the restaurant, get the whole experience. They press their own olives. They make all sorts of other things there. And so, it's all about that experience. So go out to the world. That's our message. Make your own memories. Go out to the world. Travel to wine regions because it turns out that wine regions are pretty cool.
Or warm, depending on the climate. Always helpful.
Oh, are we back to that? Back to the shoes in the fridge again?
We are, exactly. But so what have we got coming up next month? So next month on Discoverers, we're doing Greece. On Adventurers, we're doing Greek islands.
Yeah.
Into October, we're going to do a little bit of Rioja. We might do a Tempranillo masterclass.
Tempranillos from around the world.
And then in November, look at us planning. On our Discovery Centre, we're going to do if you like X, you might like Y. So what we're going to do is try and get alternatives to your comfort zone wines, and then we're doing an old world versus new world masterclass. But we're going to
so for your adventurous series people, that's going to be fun
because it's going to be blind.
Yeah.
We're not going to tell you what the wines are. We're going to have a little guessing game. We might have some competitions. Who knows?
We might.
I might not even tell Alex which is which and see how good he is.
Oh, that's harsh. Okay. Yeah, you should. We should do them blind as well.
But we are back live in September, and we'll be live going forward. September 8th, we are doing a one-off, a special with Rivana Vineyards. So it's not included in the club because it's a standalone with our friends at Vineyard Cellars and Rivana. 6 wines, 3 from Oregon, 2 from Argentina and 1 from Napa Valley. And Dylan York, who's head of the American Sommelier Association, is coming in from New York to host it live with me. Dive in, get this, tell a friend, have fun with it, because it is a one-off. It's very, very limited. When it's sold out, it's sold out, because when you have wines at this kind of value, there's only so many bottles made. So I think we're only going to have about 50 or 60 packs total. And it's not just us. There's other independent retailers around the country able to sell these as well. So they are going to get snapped up sharpish. Yeah. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy this wherever you're tasting it, whether you're at home, on the beach, in your Airbnb, or you've taken on the plane to go on holiday. But we'll see you live again in September.
We will.
Enjoy the rest of your summer. Cheers.